Okay, good morning, Les.
Good morning, David. I just wanted you to have the first word so I can have the last word.
Last word. Okay, you get it in the last word anyway. So, okay, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
You want the second word then?
Yes, please go ahead.
Would you like to
See,
introduce, would you like to introduce our topic this morning?
yes, the topic of stress.
And what is
Go
it?
ahead, David.
And what does it do to us?
Well, I got to tell you this. I love how David and I were talking about what stress is a lot of us, including myself too, like David, we actually thought stress, a lot of us think stress is psychological. And there is a psychological component, but we all miss it very often that stress is really a physiological component to it. And David will speak a little bit more about it from a medical side, that it is truly unbelievable. It's like acid in our body when we don't know how to deal with it. So it has such damaging changes to our physiology and our organs that we can make predictions here. And David will talk a little bit more about that. But I have to agree with you, David. Off camera, we're talking. When we think of stress, we think that we're weak. We think psychological, but really, there's such a strong physiological reaction. It can even worsen and flare up physical pain, make anxiety worse, depression worse, can amplify anger. And so we get caught up in this cycle. What are your thoughts, David?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is I think we've almost given up to use the word mind body because it implies a separation, but it's just a unit. You can't fly a Boeing jet without a computer. You cannot run your body without a brain. So your brain's processing all this input and responding appropriately. So stresses, I mean, thoughts, we'll be talking about this at the workshop, are one of the threats, but any threat, heat, hot, cold, the traffic, whatever it is, they're all threats. They're real things. They're not psychological. Then your body responds at a unit. The problem with stress being psychological is what got me in deep trouble personally, is that I thought the way you deal with stress, you're just tough. And that's
Right.
the worst thing to do because we know that unpleasant thoughts and unpleasant thoughts they create an inflammatory response in your body. Repressed thoughts are even worse.
Yeah.
And so stress will kill you. There's dozens and dozens of paper on the effects of stress on the body. And I've known this since medical school, which is a long time ago. But in 1960, I remember it's called the Holmes-Rahe scale, published out of the University of Washington, published in 1962. And they documented that there's certain life events that they put a score to. And what they did, and they put a score on each one of them. And if you scored 300 points, you had an 80% chance of a serious illness within 2 years, 80%. And this is what, 60 years ago? And so let me just read a couple of them. The highest one is death of a spouse, then divorce, marital separation from a mate, jail, death of a close family member. Those are like 60 to 100 points. Then it gets into major personal injury, illness, 53, marriage, just the act of getting married, et cetera, is 50. Then it goes down, there's troubles with the boss, changes, just moving, new school. I mean, there's also positive stresses, but it's still stressful. So if you plan on doing a trip to Europe, that's stressful. I mean, it's enjoyable, but it's still, the body has to process the environment. So your body responds as a unit. And part of that unit is increased metabolism, or the rate you burn fuel, increase inflammation, immune system. And there's lots of stresses that flat out your body reacts to, and your body needs to respond to these stresses quickly and move on. What the body doesn't do well, it doesn't do well under sustained stress. So if you have a bad boss, if you have a bad marriage, so the marriage is bad enough, but when it is sustained, it will cause serious diseases.
Yeah, I think, David, I think let's pause here for a second, if you don't mind. I think we want to make sure we're clear to the audience that we're not saying stress is bad. It's the chronicity of it.
Correct.
It is the inescapable feeling of I'm trapped in a terrible job, financial situation, relationship issues, chronic pain. You know, when you get that I'm helpless and hopeless and dejected, it's the chronicity of it is what it is, right, David?
Yeah, and you and I both have had friends, and me more than you, unfortunately, I'm a little older. And I have a lot of friends now that have had cancer. Every one of them has been under extreme stress at the time they develop the disease. Remember, every day your body has cancer cells in it. Your immune system picks them off selectively. That's why we're alive, because of our immune system. And so that's what your body has abnormal cells that the body picks off and throws away. So with chronic stress, remember the model dynamic healings, we have the input in the nervous system and the output, and we want our physiology to be either neutral or safe most of the time and to go into threat when we need to. So we have lots of stress, that's input, and your nervous system processes it. And then it's also shown this that what we're doing in the workshop on Saturday, that we know with thoughts, we try not to think about something, think about it more, and we try to think about something, think about it less, but it's all greatly magnified under stress. And the term you use, Les, is what? Allostatic load? Is that the correct
Yeah,
term?
yeah, that's exact. It's wear and tear in the body. That's literally Latin to English saying is when it's like gnawing at us. One of the things, David, I'm not sure if this is a great time to interject this, but what you're talking about, the chronicity of stress. Let's put some perspective and some science behind this, David. ACE. For those of you audience members who are not familiar with the word ACE, ACE, adverse childhood experiences. And there are about 10 categories. And David, I think that's real important to have up, I think, is to let people know that when we get exposed to the chronicity of stress, but what we psychologists call developmental trauma, where you witness violence, there was chaotic household, someone, was incarcerated, lack of warmth from parents, constantly just kind of writing at you, those kind of things, and emotional, physical, abuse, sexual abuse, all of that changes your nervous system. And the word I'd like to use, your nervous system becomes recalibrated into a higher level of defensiveness. It's constantly vigilant. And that changes your whole chemistry. And as you go through life and adulthood, the more accumulation, the allostatic load, stress, it actually wears on your nervous system. And eventually, sometimes people are surprised, like, I'm not sure why I got cancer or why I got cardiac disease or why am I so depressed. The ACE study shows that it can make predictions on who will develop medical conditions, even diabetes, smoking, and all the other chronic medical conditions that you've mentioned previously. So,
Well, Dr. Karian, presented this study. He can even look at your brain. And there's a connection in the brain between two parts of the brain that has an 80 to 90% chance of predicting chronic pain. If you have that connection and get a new injury, there's an 80 to 90% chance you'll have chronic pain. Why is it there? And we're going to go into the thoughts are one of the stresses that I think are as deadly as any, because they're chronic. So what we're doing in the workshop, we understand. So, okay, stress isn't the problem, it's your reaction to stress. Avoiding stress is a problem. It's how you process it. So the inputs there, so if you can change your stress is fine, but remember the stresses that are most damaging, we're talking about stress management, the stresses that are most damaging are the stresses you can't manage, right? So
right.
Stress management is a huge misnomer. It's actually about stress processing.
Yeah, and that's a very beautifully said, and I think that's a term that needs to be spoken about more. Is many of the things that we struggle with as adults, we're never equipped with. We might have been equipped with social manners and equipped with grit, like just power through it. However, very few of us adults, even in our 60s, 70s, 80s, even older, have never been equipped on how to process stress. And because we have new science that says, if you don't know how to relate to it differently, it creates more havoc. And as you've said, David, which I agree with you, is one of the most difficult things for us human beings to do is if we cannot run away from our shadow, which I call our thoughts.
Right.
They're constantly there. And this is why it's so important to have skills. My heart breaks when I have patients, especially new ones, who want to argue with me that has nothing to do with their body and pain. And I have a running joke. I usually say, like, well, once you leave your head outside my office and let your body walk in, they said, that's stupid. I'm like, right? So the point here is
my wife accuses me of that all the time. That my head's outside. I'm still here.
You're still here. That's exactly right. So I think it's a very important thing to recognize that a lot of the stress is the chronicity of it. It does impact the body. What makes this even more and amplified is when you have exposure to early trauma and adulthood trauma. We need to learn to pause frequently throughout the day. If you have chronic pain, anxiety, depression, you have a lot of that stuff, or the combination of it, or chronic medical conditions like diabetes and all those, you need to learn to pause and be able to slow things down, whether with your breath, whether with what you're doing, being able to shift. Because when you get stressed, the goal is to recover.
Well,
Stress, recovery.
let me just clarify the statement for a second. So we say shift. So again, think of the physiology. Physiology means
Yeah.
the body functions. So you're in threat physiology. And so there's a bunch of ways of dealing with it that goes into neutral or safe. So let me have, I'll give you the last word today.
No, it's okay, David.
No, I'll give it to you. So your famous physiology, psychology one, I just don't ever remember the words.
Your physiological states determines your psychological states. Physio determines psychological states.
Right. If you're full of adrenaline, cortisol, inflammation, you're not going to be relaxed. Your brain's going to your brain actually throws off inflammatory cytokines. Your brain's actually inflamed. So that's not a great state to be in. So anyway, we're out of time. As you can tell, we're excited about the workshop. The last 2 weeks of discussing the workshop with you has actually made some significant changes in me. I'm becoming much more diligent about connecting, running relaxation. Awareness is a big one. Watching my thoughts, separating from them more. It's game on.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's great. Thank you, David. Hopefully folks found this helpful. And David, I think that's a powerful topic that was raised this morning. So.
It's this Saturday, the 14th of August. The link is on Facebook Live today. You'll see that about signing up for the workshop. And it's going to be really excellent. We're excited about it.
Great.
We'll see you.
Have a great day, David. See you, everyone.